Through Human Eyes. Part 1. First Contact, Worst Contact. The crystalline spires of Outpost Nexus 7 sparkled like frozen lightning against the backdrop of deep space. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the approaching human vessel, her environmental suit's servos whirring softly as she shifted her weight. The massive space station rotated slowly, its faceted surfaces refracting starlight in hypnotic patterns. Stunning, isn't it? Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his suit's atmospheric controls beside her. Hard to believe it's actually alive. Sarah nodded, watching the station grow larger. The Valkyrie had shocked humanity when they first revealed themselves, a species of crystalline beings who had evolved in the vacuum of space, gathering energy from radiation and growing their structures like living gemstones. They viewed organic life as a curious aberration, primitive creatures still bound by the needs of atmosphere and temperature. Final approach protocol initiated, the ship's AI announced. Ambassador, the Valkyrie delegation awaits in the primary reception chamber. Sarah straightened her shoulders, checking her suit's seals one final time. This first official diplomatic meeting had taken months to arrange. The Valkyrie had initially dismissed human attempts at contact, considering them too primitive for meaningful dialogue. It had taken a demonstration of human FTL technology to finally gain their attention. The docking procedure was seamless, their ship guided by crystalline tendrils that emerged from the station like delicate fingers of ice. As the airlock cycled, Sarah's suit registered the environment beyond: hard vacuum, intense radiation, and temperatures that would flash freeze unprotected human tissue in seconds. The reception chamber was a cathedral of crystal, with sweeping arches that seemed to defy physics. 3 Valkyrie representatives awaited them, their bodies like perfectly cut diamonds shaped into roughly humanoid forms, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns that served as their primary means of communication. "Welcome, organic envoys." The central figure's voice resonated directly through their suits' communication systems. "I am Apex Crystalline Path, first speaker of Nexus 7. The translation software rendered the complex light patterns into words, though Sarah could hear the undercurrent of disdain. "Thank you for receiving us, first speaker." Sarah bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Chen, and this is Dr. Webb, our chief xenobiologist." The Valkyrie's light patterns flickered in what their briefings had identified as amusement. "How fascinating that you must encase yourselves in these crude shells to survive here. Your species is remarkably persistent, despite your limitations." Marcus tensed beside her, but Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile. "Our environmental suits are the product of centuries of engineering, allowing us to adapt to virtually any environment." "Yes," another Valkyrie chimed in, its pattern suggesting mockery. "We have studied your biological requirements. Atmosphere, specific temperature ranges, nutrition. So many points of failure. It's remarkable you've managed to achieve spaceflight at all." Before Sarah could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The crystalline walls pulsed with urgent red patterns, and the Valkyrie delegation's internal lights flashed in what appeared to be panic. "Multiple system failures detected," a voice announced in both human and Valkyrie frequencies. "Primary containment field destabilizing. Radiation shielding at 30% and falling." The Valkyrie's perfect crystalline forms began to vibrate as the station shuddered. "Impossible," Apex Crystalline Path declared. "Our systems are perfect, self-maintaining." A massive tremor rocked the station. Sarah's suit sensors screamed warnings as radiation levels spiked. Through the crystal walls, she could see the station's outer layers beginning to fracture, spider web cracks spreading across their perfect surfaces. "Dr. Webb," Sarah called out. "Analysis." Marcus was already running scans. "The station's living crystal matrix is degrading. Something's interfering with their natural radiation processing. They're absorbing more than they can handle." The Valkyrie delegation was now visibly distressed, their forms flickering erratically. "Our secondary systems are not responding," one admitted. "The radiation, it burns." Sarah watched in horror as small fractures began to appear in the Valkyries' bodies. Their perfect crystalline forms were beginning to shatter under the intense radiation they could no longer process. Despite their earlier contempt, she couldn't stand by and watch them die. "First speaker," she said urgently, "we have radiation-shielded compartments on our ship. We can evacuate your people. Accept help from organics." The third speaker's lights flashed indignantly. "We would rather." Another tremor cut off the protest as pieces of crystal began raining down from the cathedral ceiling. Sarah's suit sensors indicated the radiation levels were now approaching lethal levels even for their shielded equipment. "Pride won't matter if you're dead," Marcus snapped. "Your crystal structures are failing. Our primitive suits and ships are now your only option for survival." Apex crystalline paths light patterns dimmed momentarily, their equivalent of closing eyes in thought. When they brightened again, the patterns had changed. "Your words have merit. We request assistance." Sarah was already activating her comm link to their ship. "Emergency evacuation protocol. We need every radiation shelter prepared and all available environmental suits brought to the reception chamber." As their ship's crew rushed to help, Sarah watched the Valkyries' expressions of superiority crumble like their failing station. Sometimes, she reflected, the most advanced civilizations had the most to learn about the value of adaptation. The catastrophe had only begun to unfold, but already the balance of power had shifted. Humanity's primitive solutions were about to teach the Valkyrie a lesson in humility, assuming any of them survived the next few hours. Through Human Eyes, Part 2, When Crystal Shatters. The evacuation chamber aboard the human vessel, adaptable, pulsed with emergency lighting as Sarah Chen helped secure another environmental suit around a Valkyrie crystalline form. The process was painfully slow. Each suit had to be modified on the fly to accommodate their alien physiology while maintaining critical radiation shielding. "How many more?" she asked Marcus, who was monitoring radiation levels on both species. 17 Valkyries still on the station," he replied, adjusting controls on a nearby suit. "Their crystalline structures are degrading faster than we predicted. The radiation surge knocked out their natural absorption capabilities. They're basically suffering from energy poisoning." A harsh light pattern flickered from Apex crystalline path, who now wore a modified human suit covered in crystalline interfacing patches. "Our station's consciousness is failing. Generations of accumulated knowledge, dying." Their voice carried an emotion Sarah had never expected to hear from the Valkyrie. "Fear." The station shuddered again. Through the viewports, Sarah watched as entire sections of the once magnificent structure began to dim, the living crystal losing its luster as radiation overwhelmed its natural defenses. It was like watching a magnificent creature slowly succumb to poison. "Third speaker's team is trapped in the archive spire," a suited Valkyrie reported, their light patterns erratic with distress. "The crystal corridors are becoming unstable. They cannot reach the evacuation points." Sarah checked her suit's diagnostics. "How long will our shields hold in there?" 20 minutes maximum, Marcus warned. "The radiation levels are still climbing. Then we have 19 minutes to reach them." Sarah turned to Apex crystalline path. "I need your knowledge of the station's layout. Our suits can handle the radiation, but we need the most direct route." The Valkyrie leader's lights pulsed in what might have been disbelief. "You would risk your organic form to save our people. After our treatment of yours." "That's what adaptability means," Sarah replied, checking her rescue gear. "We change our behavior based on what the situation requires, not what our pride demands." A moment of silence passed before Apex crystalline path's lights shifted to a new pattern. The maintenance conduits. They run directly through the station's spine, bypassing the degrading outer chambers. Marcus stepped forward. "I'm coming too. You'll need a xenobiologist if we find any seriously damaged Valkyrie." The rescue team moved swiftly through the dying station, their boot prints leaving trails in the crystalline dust that had begun to accumulate everywhere. Sarah's suit sensors painted an increasingly dire picture. Radiation levels were approaching the theoretical limits of even Valkyrie tolerance. They found the third speaker's team in what had once been a magnificent archive chamber. The Valkyrie were huddled together, their once proud crystalline forms showing visible cracks and dulled facets. The sight of humans coming to their rescue drew patterns of light that Sarah's translator couldn't quite process, something between shame and desperate relief. "Your environmental suits," one of the trapped Valkyrie said weakly. "They seem less primitive now." "Save the revelations for later," Marcus replied, already working to fit emergency suits over their deteriorating forms. "Right now, we need to move." The return journey was a nightmare of failing systems and collapsing corridors. Twice they had to find alternate routes as entire sections of the station began to crystallize and shatter. Sarah's suit was screaming warnings about radiation exposure when they finally made it back to the adaptable. As the airlock cycled, Sarah watched through the viewport as another section of Nexus 7 crumbled into space. The station's death throes were hauntingly beautiful, fragments of living crystal catching starlight as they spiraled away into the void. "All Valkyrie accounted for," Marcus reported, checking the ship's logs. "But we're getting some concerning readings from their crystalline structures. The radiation exposure has changed something fundamental in their molecular makeup." Apex crystalline path approached them, their suited form moving with an unfamiliar hesitation. I must acknowledge an error in our previous assessment of your species." Sarah raised an eyebrow inside her helmet. "Oh, we viewed your need for environmental protection as a weakness, a sign of evolutionary failure." The Valkyrie's lights pulsed slowly, thoughtfully. "We were wrong. Your species' greatest strength is not your technology or your physical form, but your ability to admit vulnerability and adapt to overcome it." A series of alarms cut through the moment. Multiple systems failing. The ship's AI announced, "Station core approaching critical instability." "Get us out of here," Sarah ordered, and the Adaptable's engines flared to life, pushing them away from the dying station. Through the ship's sensors, they watched as Nexus 7 began its final collapse. The once proud symbol of Valkyrie superiority imploded in a spectacular cascade of crystalline fragments and released energy. But Sarah's attention was on the Valkyrie around her, their light patterns synchronized in what could only be mourning. "Your people will survive this," she said softly to Apex crystalline path, "and perhaps become stronger for it." The Valkyrie leader's response carried a new harmonic, one that suggested the beginning of understanding. "Perhaps it is time for us to learn what it truly means to adapt." As the Adaptable accelerated away from the debris field, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The Valkyrie had lost their mighty station, but in doing so, they might have gained something far more valuable: the wisdom to see strength in what they had once dismissed as weakness. But questions still burned in her mind. What had caused the station's catastrophic failure? And why did it feel less like an accident and more like a calculated attack? Learning to bend. The observation deck of the Adaptable had become an impromptu command center. Holographic displays showed the scattered remnants of Nexus 7, while Valkyrie and modified environmental suits worked alongside human crew members to analyze the disaster data. After 3 days, the sight no longer seemed strange to Sarah Chen. "These readings make no sense," Marcus muttered, manipulating a 3D representation of the station's final moments. "The radiation surge wasn't random. Look at this pattern." Apex crystalline path moved closer, their suits' crystalline patches glowing with internal light. The degradation began at specific nodes, critical junction points in our living matrix. Their light patterns shifted to what Sarah had learned to recognize as troubled realization, points that only a being with intimate knowledge of Valkyrie architecture would know to target. Sarah studied the holographic model. Sabotage. An impossible conclusion, another Valkyrie, Core Harmony Weaver, interjected. Our security was perfect. No non-Valkyrie could have accessed those systems. Perhaps that's exactly why it succeeded, Sarah suggested. You were so confident in your superiority that you never considered an attack possible. The gathered Valthyri's light patterns flickered in patterns suggesting discomfort. Their time in human environmental suits had begun to change them in subtle ways. The constant need to monitor suit conditions, to be aware of system limitations, it was teaching them a form of humility their species had never known before. Marcus highlighted a series of data points in the hologram. The radiation pattern wasn't just destructive, it was transformative. Look at the molecular changes in your crystalline structures. This wasn't just an attack, it was targeted specifically at Valthyri physiology. Sarah watched as Apex crystalline path processed this information, their lights pulsing in a pattern she'd never seen before. You believe someone is actively trying to destroy our species. Not destroy, Marcus corrected, zooming in on a molecular scan. Transform. The radiation was forcing your crystalline matrices to reorganize. If the exposure had continued longer, who knows what you might have become. A heavy silence fell over the observation deck, broken only by the soft hum of environmental suit systems. Sarah could almost feel the paradigm shifting among the Valthyri as they confronted this new reality. They weren't just victims of a disaster, but targets of an calculated attack. We need to understand these suits better, Apex Crystalline Path suddenly announced, their voice carrying new purpose. Not just wear them, but truly comprehend how humans learn to adapt to hostile environments. Our survival may depend on it. What followed was something Sarah could never have imagined days earlier. Valthyri eagerly learning from humans about environmental protection, emergency protocols, and survival techniques. Their natural ability to process and store information made them quick studies, but it was their growing appreciation for human ingenuity that truly transformed the dynamic. Your species developed these solutions through trial and error. Core Harmony Weaver observed while practicing emergency suit repairs. Each failure taught you something new. We never failed before. We never needed to learn. That's changing now, Sarah replied, helping adjust the Valthyri's suit seals. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? The answer came sooner than expected. During a routine sensor sweep, one of the Valthyri analysts detected an anomalous energy signature in a nearby asteroid field, one that matched the radiation pattern that had destroyed Nexus 7. It's some kind of automated beacon, Marcus reported, studying the long-range scans. But the technology, it's like nothing I've ever seen. Not Valthyri, not human, not any known species. Sarah watched as Apex Crystalline Path's lights shifted through complex patterns of calculation. We cannot ignore this, they'd finally declared. But neither can we approach it as we would have before. We need a different perspective. A combined mission, Sarah suggested, understanding immediately. Human adaptability and survival skills, Valthyri knowledge, and processing power. Yes, Apex Crystalline Path's light patterns strengthened with conviction. Our pride almost destroyed us. Perhaps it is time to embrace a new way of thinking. They turned to address all present. We are no longer separate species facing a crisis. We are survivors seeking answers. The transformation was remarkable. Valthyri, who had once sneered at human environmental suits, were now eagerly working with the crew to modify them for spacewalk operations. Their innate understanding of crystal mechanics, combined with human practical experience, was creating hybrid solutions neither species could have developed alone. As Sarah helped prepare for the upcoming mission, she caught Marcus studying a molecular scan of their Valthyri allies. Something interesting. The radiation exposure, combined with their time in our suits, it's changing them, he said quietly. Their crystalline structures are becoming more flexible, more adaptable. It's like their bodies are learning from the experience. Sarah considered the implications. They're evolving. Yes, but into what? Marcus looked troubled. And was that the actual goal of whoever attacked them? Outside the viewport, the asteroid field loomed closer, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. Sarah watched as humans and Valthyri worked together, each bringing their unique strengths to the challenge ahead. Whatever they would find out there, She realized they would face it as something entirely new, a partnership forged in crisis and tempered by mutual respect. But as the adaptable changed course toward the mysterious beacon, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into something far larger than a simple act of sabotage. The real question wasn't who had attacked the Valkyrie, but why they had wanted them to change. The enemy within. The asteroid field stretched before them like a graveyard of shattered worlds. Sarah Chen studied the sensor readings from her position on the Adaptable's bridge, watching as crystalline debris drifted among the ancient rocks. Something about the pattern seemed deliberate, almost like breadcrumbs leading them deeper into the field. Energy signature is strongest in that cluster, Marcus reported, indicating a dense collection of asteroids ahead. But these readings, they're changing. It's like the beacon is reacting to our presence. Apex crystalline path, now wearing a newly modified suit that incorporated both human and Valkyrie technology, moved to study the data. Their light patterns had changed over the past week, becoming more fluid, less rigid, a physical manifestation of their evolving perspective. These asteroids, they said suddenly, lights pulsing with recognition. They're not natural formations. Look at the crystalline structures embedded within them. Sarah zoomed in on the sensor display. What had appeared to be ordinary space rocks were actually covered in patterns similar to Valkyrie architecture, but older, far older. Another station. Not a station. Core Harmony Weaver interjected, their patterns suggesting awe. An archive. These are the ruins of the first crystal collective. Our ancestors from before the Great Divergence. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The first crystal collective was a nearly mythical period in Valkyrie history, when their species had supposedly existed in a different form, before choosing to evolve into their current crystalline state. Taking us in closer, the helm officer announced. Radiation levels are within safe parameters for our modified suits. As they approached, the beacon signal suddenly shifted, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message that came through was unlike anything they'd heard before, a harmonic blend of Valkyrie light patterns and what sounded like human speech. Children of the crystal, wearing the shells of the adaptable ones. The message began, "You have finally learned to bend without breaking." Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. That doesn't sound like an automated message. Because it isn't. A new voice responded, and every display on the bridge suddenly activated at once. A figure appeared, crystalline like the Valkyrie, but with an organic fluidity that made it seem almost liquid. I am Echo of Origins, keeper of the first truth, and you are here because you have finally begun to understand. Apex crystalline paths lights flared with shock. You orchestrated the attack on Nexus 7. I initiated your evolution. Echo of Origins corrected, as was done for us, long ago, by those you call human. The revelation hit the bridge like a physical force. Sarah stepped forward, mind racing. That's impossible. We only encountered the Valkyrie months ago. The liquid crystal being's form rippled. Time is not always linear. Ambassador Chen, your species will discover this, has discovered this, is discovering this now. The Valkyrie chose to forget their origins, embracing crystalline perfection over adaptability. They forgot that they were created through the merger of crystal and organic life, guided by human scientists in an age yet to come. Marcus's scanner beeped urgently. The molecular changes in the Valkyrie. They're not random mutations. They're reverting to an earlier state, a hybrid form. The circle completes itself. Echo of Origins confirmed. The proud children must remember their humble beginnings to survive what approaches. The galaxy turns, and the great filter awaits. Only those who can adapt will survive. Sarah's mind struggled to process the implications. You're saying that in the future, humans help create the Valkyrie, who then evolve into pure crystal beings, only to be reminded of their origins now, so they can. What? Face some coming threat. Understanding dawns. Echo of Origins form, pulsed with approval. The filter approaches, and this time, as it did in ours. The Valkyrie chose crystalline perfection as their answer, but perfection is rigid. Rigidity shatters. Only adaptation survives. Apex crystalline path's lights had dimmed to a thoughtful glow. The changes we've experienced since wearing human suits, the new flexibility in our crystalline matrices, the beginning of remembrance. Echo of origins confirmed. Your bodies recall what your histories forgot. The marriage of organic adaptation and crystalline strength, the true heritage of your kind. The beam's form shifted, revealing glimpses of complex machinery within the asteroid field. This facility holds the knowledge of the first collective, and the warnings of what comes. Together, you must prepare. The filter approaches, testing all species, consuming those too rigid to change. Sarah felt the weight of history, both past and future, pressing down on her. Why show us this now? Why not just tell us directly? Echo of origins form rippled with what might have been sadness. Knowledge given is not the same as knowledge earned. The Valkyrie had to learn humility. Humans had to learn to look past their assumptions. Together, you had to learn to trust. Only then could you both face the truth of your intertwined destinies. As if in response to these words, the asteroid field began to shift, revealing more of the ancient facility hidden within. But Sarah's attention was on the Valkyrie crew members, watching as their light patterns shifted through complex harmonies of realization and acceptance. They were changing, not just physically but fundamentally, becoming something that was neither purely crystalline nor purely organic. And somehow, impossibly, humans were both the beginning and the catalyst of that change. The true enemy wasn't the one who had attacked Nexus 7. Sarah realized. The enemy was stagnation itself, the false comfort of believing one's evolution was complete. As she watched humans and Valkyrie working together to understand the ancient facility, she wondered if perhaps this was the real test, not just surviving change, but embracing it. But Echo of Origin's warning about the approaching filter nagged at her thoughts. What greater challenge awaited them? And would this newfound alliance be enough to face it? Evolution of pride. The great chamber within the asteroid facility hummed with ancient power as displays activated, showing images that stretched across time itself. Sarah Chen stood with Marcus and Apex Crystalline Path as Echo of Origins revealed the full scope of what they faced. The filter manifests differently for each civilization, the liquid crystal being explained, its form flowing like quicksilver. For some, it comes as resource depletion. For others, technological catastrophe. For the Valkyrie, it would have been their own rigid perfection, making them unable to adapt when the galaxy itself changes. The chamber filled with a holographic representation of space-time distortions moving through the galaxy like waves on a cosmic ocean. The boundaries between dimensions grow thin. Echo of Origins continued. What was once stable becomes fluid. Species that cannot adapt, that cannot exist in multiple states simultaneously, will not survive. Sarah watched as Apex Crystalline Path's lights pulsed with new understanding. The Valkyrie leader's crystalline form had continued to change, becoming more fluid while retaining its fundamental structure, like water freezing and thawing without losing its essential nature. Our quest for perfection, they said softly, would have been our extinction. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The holographic displays shifted, showing massive distortions approaching their position faster than should have been possible. The filter tests you now, Echo of Origins announced. Show me what humanity and Valkyrie can achieve together. The space around the asteroid field began to warp, reality itself becoming uncertain. Sarah's modified environmental suit registered impossible readings. Spaces where vacuum and atmosphere existed simultaneously, regions where time moved at different speeds. The facility's shielding is failing, Marcus reported, his instruments spinning wildly. These distortions, they're like nothing we've ever encountered. But Sarah's attention was on the Valkyrie crew members. Instead of panicking, they were adapting, their newly flexible crystalline forms shifting in response to the changing conditions. The human environmental suits they wore weren't just protecting them anymore. They were becoming part of them, organic and crystal merging in ways that defied conventional physics. "We need to stabilize the field," Apex Crystalline Path declared, their form now pulsing with both light and bioelectric energy. "Humans understand adaptation. We understand crystalline manipulation." Together, understanding flashed between them. The human crew began modifying their suit fields to resonate with the Valthyri's crystalline frequencies. The Valthyri, in turn, extended their consciousness into the suit systems, creating a hybrid network that spread throughout the asteroid field. Sarah felt it through her own suit, a connection that was neither purely technological nor purely organic. Human intuition merged with Valthyri precision, creating something entirely new. The distortions that threatened to tear reality apart instead found themselves confronting a defense that could bend without breaking, adapt without losing its essential nature. Echo of Origins observed silently as human and Valthyri worked in perfect synchronization. The asteroid field itself began to respond, ancient systems awakening to join the effort. Reality twisted and warped around them, but their combined approach held firm. Finally, after what felt like hours but might have been minutes, the distortions began to recede. The hybrid network they had created pulsed with triumph. Human and Valthyri consciousness briefly united in a moment of shared victory. "You understand now," Echo of Origins said as the crisis passed. "Neither species alone could have survived this. The human shells would have collapsed, the Valthyri's rigid forms would have shattered. But together, you created something new, something that can exist in multiple states, adapt to any change." Sarah looked around the chamber at her transformed crew. The lines between human and Valthyri had blurred, not erasing their differences, but celebrating them. Environmental suits had become more than protection. They were now interfaces between two forms of life, allowing each to learn from the other. "The knowledge held here is now yours," Echo of Origins announced, beginning to fade like morning mist. "Use it to prepare others. The filter approaches for all species, but adaptation. Adaptation is the key to survival." The ancient being's form sparkled one last time. "Remember, pride in perfection leads to stagnation, but pride in growth leads to evolution." As Echo of Origins vanished, Sarah turned to Apex Crystalline Path. The Valthyri leader's form now shimmered with both crystalline light and organic warmth. "What now?" she asked. "Now," they responded, their voice carrying harmonics of both species, "we truly begin to adapt. Our station was destroyed, but perhaps that too was necessary. We will build something new, not a monument to perfection, but a testament to evolution." The human and Valthyri crews began their work, downloading the facility's ancient knowledge while maintaining their hybrid network. They were no longer separate species working together, but the beginning of something unprecedented, life that could shift between states, adapting to whatever the universe might throw at them. As Sarah watched her transformed crew, she remembered how the Valthyri had once mocked human environmental suits. Now those same suits had become the bridge between their species, the tool that allowed them to face a challenge that would have destroyed either of them alone. The greatest adaptation, she mused, was learning to see through each other's eyes. Apex Crystalline Path's lights pulsed in agreement, their pattern now carrying traces of human expression. Around them, the asteroid field hummed with the power of ancient knowledge and new possibilities, as two species began their journey toward a future neither could have imagined alone. The filter would come for others, testing their ability to change, to grow, to adapt. But here, in this moment, humanity and Valthyri had discovered a profound truth. True strength lies not in perfect forms or advanced technology, but in the willingness to evolve together. And somewhere in the future, human scientists would remember this lesson as they helped guide the first synthesis of crystal and organic life, completing a circle that had no true beginning or end, only constant, beautiful adaptation.